Thanks for joining me for another edition of Groove with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. So I had someone ask me what is Groove with Portia. I answered nicely, I promise. Groove with Portia targets those who are curious, eager, and hungry for new information that can aid in their personal and professional development. Malcolm X once said, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." My motto for everybody, never stop learning. Be a sponge for the rest of your life. So before I jump into my topic for today, I want to start off with a little history lesson. So thanks again for joining me today, Miss Paula Francis from Gross National Happiness USA. Welcome, Miss Paula.
Oh, thank you for having me, Portia. I'm happy to be grooving with you.
Yes, ma'am. This is what we do. Groove and move, right?
That's right.
Today is National iPod Day. So Apple introduced the iPod on October 23rd, 2001. The iPod changed the way we listen to and purchase music. The first iPod was sold on November 10th, 2001 for $399. iPod Day pays recognition to the groundbreaking technology and the many people it impacted. Do you remember that, Miss Paula, when iPods came out?
I remember them being very big, clunky, and boy, have we streamlined it since then.
Yeah, I wonder if people still purchase iPods today.
I really don't know.
I mean, because you figure Apple just unleashed its iPhone 11 a couple weeks ago. So I know that they're still on their website potentially, but I'm wondering how many people still buy them.
That's a good question.
So I remember when the iPods came out. I was fortunate enough to get an iPod Nano. It was that bright blue, very pretty color. Well, sad story with my first iPod Nano. My sister threw it in the fish tank that we had. I mean, it literally, you watched it just sink to the bottom, like doot, doot, doot. You know, the good thing is we were able to take it back to Apple, and we kind of just told them that it was defective when we got it. So I was able to get a new one, which it wasn't the bright blue one because they sold out since, you know, obviously it was around the holiday time. So I ended up getting a green one, and yeah, the rest was history. I remember always uploading different music to my iPod. I had so many different albums, and on my old computer in my room, I still have my iTunes with all the music I downloaded and purchased.
Well, hopefully people are listening to your podcast on these iPods, if they are still there.
Well, you know, they can listen in on the show, you know, right from their phone, or if they still have an iPod Touch, those, as long as they're connected to Wi-Fi, you can use, you know, internet and different things like that. But yeah, I miss my iPod sometimes, because that's when, to me, you know, even though technology was just then kind of getting big and, you know, we were relying more on it, I think it was a lot simpler, and not all the devices were all in one. You know, you figure now the iPods or the iPhones and all the smartphones today, you can listen to music, you can stream it, you can browse the internet. You could do everything at one time versus the iPod was just strictly for music. So Paula Francis is the co-founder and president of the Gross National Happiness USA. She has been enamored with the idea of an economy grounded in happiness since first learning about the concept in 2008. Soon after, she became one of the original organizers of the Gross National Happiness USA and traveled to Bhutan to witness the gross national happiness in action. Influenced by the peace pilgrim and her unrelenting quest to share goodwill while traversing the country on foot, Paula likewise leans on her strong spiritual foundation to create social change, one person, one step at a time. Welcome again, Paula, for joining me. Thanks again.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Portia.
So, Paula, just for starters, for our listeners who may not be familiar with the gross national happiness, what is it? Just kind of give us a definition.
Sure. So, Gross National Happiness USA believes that the true measure of a nation's wealth is that in the happiness and the well-being of its people. So we learned about, as you just mentioned, gross national happiness back in 2008, but really it had been around since 1972 when Bhutan's fourth Dragon King, Wangchuk, termed the phrase gross national happiness as a socioeconomic model for measuring what truly matters in life. And the framework involves three major pillars. One of them is good governance. The second is sustainable development. And the third is the preservation and promotion of culture as well as environmental conservation. So when you think about what we measure here in the United States and what is being used around the globe is gross domestic product. And really what that is it puts a monetary value on all goods and services, right? It doesn't have that holistic feel of measuring all the other things that are truly important in life. In fact, I don't know if you would remember ever hearing Senator Robert Kennedy when he said gross national product measures everything except that which matters most in life. And yet we tend to use the GDP to guide our decisions, our policies, and our actions in the United States, really to a fault, because it was never intended to measure our well-being. And in fact, the king in Bhutan said way back in the 70s, if the government cannot create happiness for its people, there is no purpose for government. So we really need to be thinking about how we measure progress and success here in the United States, around the globe, of course, but Gross National Happiness USA is really focused on how do we bring this concept of focusing on all the things that people consider to be important in life, measuring those things and having them be our North Star when we are considering what policies to put in place and decisions that we make in our daily life. So that's the major overview of gross national happiness. It does break it down to other smaller buckets, if you will. They call them domains of happiness, and those are things such as psychological well-being, our standard of living, and our material well-being. Good governance, of course, as is mentioned in the pillars. Our health, education. You talked about education as being the passport to our future, so it's highly valued. Mm-hmm. Our community vitality, our cultural diversity, and maintaining our traditions, like you were talking about storytelling. Balanced use of time, which we are woefully needing here in the United States. And lastly, our ecological diversity. So really focusing on our environment and the planet. And some people, even here in the United States, have adopted a 10th domain of work. But those are the 9 domains that many around the globe have adopted as the foundations of gross national happiness in its measures.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what you said, when it comes to work, especially here in the United States, some people have not just one job, but many. And so to me, that makes me wonder how work can be factored in these domains when some people are just working themselves to death.
Right. One of the things that I'm doing as I'm on this happiness walk around the country is interviewing people to just get a sense of whether these domains and these pillars truly reflect what people here in the United States experience and what we value. So work comes up from time to time, but it's more about doing something meaningful and contributing to society. But what I'm hearing you say, Portia, is also an issue of balanced time use, right? So if we could contribute in a meaningful way and be secure in our needs by being able to secure the material things that make life comfortable and safe by not working several jobs, right? And also having time for our family and for recreation and being out in nature. We don't have very much balance in the United States when we're a work kind of attitude, and we're racing all the time from one thing to the other, very overscheduled.
Double booking, triple. I mean, not to cut into your conversation, but you look at doctors as a simple example. They have to see so many patients throughout the day and throughout the week. It's like, how do you spend time with your family without being just beat tired?
I have spoken with a diverse group of people, as you can imagine, as I walk these 10,000 miles around the country, interviewing people, and some physicians and nurses, and I have to say, I agree. They, as a blanket statement, seem to be very stressed in their jobs. There's a lot that comes with the responsibility and the workload of medical professionals, and absolutely, stress is not a good recipe for happiness. Let me tell you.
Absolutely. I mean, that kind of goes with our concept of supply and demand. I mean, there's, not exactly an abundance of certain doctors in a certain specialty. So there's always the issue of you have too many people working, but, they're getting paid to pretty much do nothing. Or you have a shortage of these staffed people, but they're overworked. So it's like, where is the balance there?
Right. Plus, we also have to get better at understanding the root causes of why so many people are in need of serious medical help. So what we would like to see with the information we're collecting at Gross National Happiness USA and through other measures that are available to us is figuring out what we can do to prevent a lot of the unwanted consequences such as ill health, so that we can grow the conditions that support our well-being, instead of just simply having to find remedies for our ill health. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Kind of putting a Band-Aid approach on it. Now, just a follow-up question to what you were talking about, to prevent these unwanted consequences from, people being overworked, people being very stressed out. While you're doing these interviews, what are the common domains that you run into from people on your journey?
So the question that I'm asking people as I walk is, what matters most in life? And I'm finding that there are consistent responses. I will speak from what I sense is true right now, but we will be analyzing all of the information once this walk is finished in November, and we'll have a more concrete way of presenting what was learned. But what people say they truly care about and what we value are our connections to one another, right? People matter. And beyond that, taking care of one another is something that we all value. We want to have a positive impact on other people's lives. We want to see other people happy. And beyond that, our community. So you can see how it's all connected. It's people connecting with people and having a sense of belonging in their community and giving back in a meaningful way to the community as well. And then something that I was originally surprised to hear, but I guess I'm not any longer, is what we value is, and what matters is a belief that we hold in something higher than ourselves, many of us. And of course, that differs for different people. For some people, it's a very formal religion. For others, it's a connection to the awe of nature. But the fact that there is something beyond ourselves that we really need to pay attention to. But beyond that, of course, people truly care about their health, and also, and what I'm also finding is that people tend to respond, and this is just a sense, people often respond about health once they figure out they don't have good health. So it's something that comes to the forefront by not having what they wish for. So it would be a wonderful gift to all of us if we could not have to get down to the place of ill health or of suffering before we create the conditions that support our well-being. So that's basically what I'm finding. And I walked today, as of today, I've walked just a little bit over 9,500 miles.
Oh,
I actually started, yes. It surprises me too.
Now, where are you currently at, Miss Paula?
I'm calling you from Ithaca, New York, which is so close to my ending point in Boston, which will be on November 2nd. I kid people and I say I'm about one pair of shoes away from the end of this walk because my shoes tend to last about 500 miles. So I have traveled 32 different states, and as you can imagine, have spoken to thousands and thousands of people along the way, and from all walks of life, all different ages and whatnot. And it has been an absolute gift to be on the receiving end of listening to people talk about something that's truly important to them. I don't
Absolutely.
think we spend enough time, honestly, listening to one another, and I think we need more of these real conversations that allow people the space to share the wisdom that everyone holds.
Right, absolutely. We listen with the anticipation to talk. We don't actually listen all the time to digest what the person is saying. Because, like you said, our schedules are so busy that we only make little time for things that generally make us happy.
Right.
And, to kind of piggyback on what you said about when you're interviewing these people and you ask them kind of what matters most to them, connections to one another, taking care of others in the community. The thing that I find interesting is that we are so connected now with social media, but also we're disconnected as well because people just have a hard time having a face-to-face conversation, but they can do it through text and email and, FaceTime.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is a theme that has presented itself along the way. There's great concern that our social media is driving us and we're not driving it. And so that there are several stories that I've heard about how we're not as easily able to make eye contact or to have a fluid conversation in those connections, over the dinner table or, on the streets. We need more of this eye-to-eye contact because people are craving it. I really believe that.
Yeah, and when you talked about the domains that that in Bhutan that they take very seriously as far as the psychological well-being, your health, education, community, cultural traditions, and balancing the use of your time. People are so wrapped up in social media that it's affecting all of these. I mean, Instagram took away the feature for people to see how many likes are on your pictures because so many people were getting discouraged of, oh, you're not liking my picture. Your picture got 500 likes and mine only got one. So it's like they want the connection, but they're getting the connection not directly, just more indirectly.
What a perfect example, Portia, of you needing the right measures, right? If we measure our social connections by the number of likes, does that truly reflect having the kinds of connections that we wish for? So we have to be very careful about what it is we're measuring because what you measure is what you put your attention to. If you want more likes on your Facebook page, that's what you will be going after. But if you really want strong relationships with people, then perhaps that's not the best indicator of relationships. So that's why we need a holistic set of measures and indicators that reflect the things that people really do wish for in their life, and that will help us get closer to creating those conditions of happiness in our communities. It really does make a difference because we get what we measure. It's been proven. So we better be measuring the right thing.
Yeah, it's like the law of attraction. You attract kind of what you think. And by the way that you speak, like you would, a lot of people say, oh, I'm depressed, I'm upset, and I don't like this, or so you're going to get that back to you, that negative feedback, that negative reinforcement.
Right. That's what you will see in this life. Absolutely. I believe that myself, and I've experienced that myself. I started this walk. I think I'm a pretty optimistic person to begin with, but I focused on seeing the good in people and the beauty in this world, and I have had those beautiful, magical moments along this walk that I never would have created myself if it were all up to me. But I got to tell you so many people ask me, the very first question is, aren't you afraid? Because perhaps that would have been their experience going into kind of the unknown world of what it is to walk around the country. But I don't take this journey in a state of fear, because once I can get rid of that, then all these beautiful possibilities open up. But if we focus on fear, it's very possible that that's what we will attract in our lives, and we will see fear in the other person. We'll see fear in the unknown. This has been a great learning for me on this journey. It's something that I will take away with me for the rest of my life. I'm certain.
Right. And there's beauty in the unknown. They say that you have to take a risk in order to truly live life abundantly. And I believe that, because if you're constantly just going to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, you come home, sleep, repeat, you're not living.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You are not living the life that you could be living.
Right.
Now, on your journey, Miss Paula, what do you have with you as far as, maybe a notebook, a camera? What do you have?
Yeah. So I'm a good Girl Scout. I'm prepared for most things in a very minimalistic way. So I carry camping equipment with me because I often don't know where I'm staying at night. So camping is always an option. Of course, I carry clothing, which is very few pieces of clothing. You'll see me wearing the same things in all my pictures. Toiletries. I bring it. I'm keeping journals, so I have that. Snacks, but very few, because I try to travel as lightly as possible. And then I have a recorder so that I can record the interviews, as well as my phone. And being always prepared for the weather, I have an umbrella as well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Portia, you won't believe this. So I try to keep my packs as light as possible, but one thing that I can't pass up are pretty little rocks. So I end up collecting these rocks, and so that's where I get my weight, I guess, on my backpack. But every once in a while, I'll stop at a post office and send them home.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you need something to commemorate your mission, something to, remind you, I stopped in this place and I met this person, and, I found this pretty rock, and maybe, there's something with the rock that correlates with where you stopped.
Yes. That's what it is. Rocks and shells and feathers. Those are the things that I tend to collect. And friends. Oh my gosh, I have met so many wonderful people around this country, many of whom I hope to stay in touch with indefinitely. You know, there's a woman that studies happiness, um, who I'm sorry, her name just popped out of my head. But anyway, she calls these moments that we meet people for the first time and have this immediate connection, and she calls them microbursts of love. Isn't that sweet?
Micro burst of love.
Yes, Barbara Fredrickson, I think it was, or Sonia Lubiniski. I can't remember which one, but this is what happens when you open up yourself to meeting new people and to allow whatever is going to happen, and to truly listen with an open heart.
Mm-hmm.
These microbursts of love are just magical, and just have made the journey that much richer.
Absolutely. I mean, that's great. That is absolutely wonderful that every stop that you make, you get that community sense, that love that we're kind of missing today in the current world that we live in.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, Portia, because I really feel that this is a very important conversation for all of us to be having. In fact, I encourage your listeners to go out and ask this question of your friends and of your family. What does matter most in life? Start having these meaningful conversations and crafting your life around your answers. I think that's very important indeed. You know, Portia, there are measures of happiness that are being used around the globe, many different ones.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have heard that it's the Scandinavian countries that have been found through surveys to be some of the happiest countries on the planet, including Norway and Denmark and Finland. And I think there's something to be learned by that. You know, what are the conditions that they have there that are supporting this high level of happiness? I also was walking in Louisiana. I don't remember, a couple of years back, because I've been doing this for some time now. But Louisiana had been recently determined to be one of the happiest states, or the happiest state in the country.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and you know, I absolutely understand that, because their culture, it's such a rich culture, and they truly value their family and relationships. I think their celebrations, there may be more celebrations per year than there are days in the year. You know, so they know how to live a happy life. Yet, you know, I walked the length of what's called Cancer Alley, which
Oh, wow.
is chemical plants that are, you know, polluting the waters and getting into the air and causing high levels of cancer around the Mississippi River. And I'm thinking, of course we want people to be happy, but we don't want these untoward conditions in our lives that we have to overcome. We want to create the kind of rich and healthy environment that supports our well-being, not just our personal well-being, but collective well-being. And here in the United States, in the past year, since 2018, on the national level, the United States has dropped one spot. In the last 2 years, since 2017, we actually dropped 5 spots in the ranking of happiness around the globe.
Wow.
So we need to pay attention to that. And especially when you consider that our gross domestic product is going up in those same years. So we're sorely missing the mark if what we are doing is solely looking at the gross domestic product as our guiding light. We need different, more holistic measures and we need to learn from what other countries are doing and modify our practices here in the United States so that we can support this wider, richer view of progress and success.
Right. Absolutely, Paula. And, when you talk about the gross domestic product, you figure a lot of people thrive on materialistic things to make them happy. So that gross domestic product, that's all they know. We need to instill values and ask that honest question, what does matter in life?
Yes, and this is the interesting part right here, is because when asked the question what matters, people clearly say what doesn't matter are material things and money. So that we're aware that the money and materialism has a place, but it's not of high import compared to the relationships and the other things that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There's a disconnect. Perhaps it's looking outward at what media is telling us we ought to value, or we simply need to be more aware of our own value system and follow our heart, basically, and not be swayed by what we're told will create happiness. Yes.
Yeah, when you think of media, it's 24/7. Social media is there even when you're asleep. The national news channels, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they're 24/7, and you're constantly getting fed everything that they're spewing out. So it's like it's almost hard to escape what is out there unless you completely turn it off. And whatever they're saying in those messages, whatever stories that they broadcast, whether it's, most of the time it's a very sad story of, people getting killed, police brutality, anything that's negative, that is, damaging psychologically for many people.
And traumatizing for those that can really associate with those horrific events too. And we need to, like you said, we need to pay attention to our media diet, just like we do with how we feed our body. How do we feed our mind? We need to be very discriminating about what is a healthy input. With also, of course, being aware. But being aware also means being aware of all the goodness that is out there. And let me tell you, I don't have to tell you, there's a lot of good
Absolutely.
out there. People are doing some amazing things.
Yes, they are.
That's not typically the news that we hear.
Oh, so of course not.
We need to seek it. We need to pay attention to that as well.
Yeah, because most of the news is bad news, and that's what gets the reaction that they want. Oh, that's so sad. A 6-year-old here in Cleveland was shot in the head last Sunday, and the child ended up passing away. But the thing about it is the media covered it, but a lot of people were up in an uproar on social media about it, but then it just, kind of falls by the wayside. After everybody reacts to it, then it just back to regular 9 to 5 business.
Yeah, that's the sad part, and it numbs us to the violence as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps us in fear of doing things, and it, being out there and being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said earlier, it's in that place of vulnerability where we can truly live life fully.
Well, and be connected as a community. People think vulnerability is a bad thing, but it's not. You're being true to yourself and allowing other people in. Now, don't get me wrong. You should be, sparse about who you let in and who you don't, but you can't be that uptight where you have a wall up all day.
That's right.
I mean, how do you expect to meet people? How do you expect to connect if you are disconnecting? Right. I describe it as when elderly people live in like an apartment and they have the little peephole in their door. Yeah. So when somebody rings the door, they go and look out the peephole. And depending on who it is, they'll either talk behind the door or they'll open it. And most of the time they keep it closed.
Right.
I mean, that's how our society currently is. And, Paula, just quick question for you. Your walk ends on November the 2nd in Boston.
Yes.
What are you hoping to, what are your goals for this walk? You've been doing it for quite some time, but, what's your end goal?
The end goal the ultimate end goal is to have our public policy reflect the things that people say truly matter in life. But in order to do that, we need to analyze all of the interviews, and we have to make sure that we have appropriate tools for policymakers to use. Like I said earlier, there are several tools already out there. We just want to make sure that they reflect the learning that we've had in the last 7 years of this walk, so that we have a different lens by which we determine what policies will be priorities or not, and what will help uplift us all as human beings, and will help us care for this planet and the animals as well. So that's the ultimate goal, is to have these tools in place and then to educate policymakers on how to use them. I think the other thing is to generate some conversation about a different way of thinking about success and progress. Let me give you one quick example of what's happened or is happening in business. I've always been brought up thinking that in business you want to grow, and create a greater bottom line. Well, I met this company, these people that were running a company, and they started growing and moving further from their hometown, and it just became larger and more stressful for them until they realized that growth was not something that was necessary. What they wanted out of their business was to take care of their employees, have enough to live on. So that's defining what enough is for them, and to have a sustainability plan. but growth wasn't equal to success. And I think that's a real shift for us here in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, because we really have been fed this concept of um, consumerism and competition at, and growth
Mm-hmm.
as being a way that of life, particularly for businesses. So I hope we start reflecting on what it is that we really do want out of life, what our role is in that, understanding yourself and your passions and how it is you want to contribute in a positive way with your time on earth here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, and I hope that people are inspired to do something, because change doesn't just happen the way we want it to unless we are a participant in it.
Mm-hmm.
So to get people to do something that is aligned with what their inspirations are. I just read, talk about social media. I just read on somebody's um, Instagram, I think it was, let the beauty we love be what we do. And I just think that's a beautiful phrase. You know, if we
Let the
come
beauty we
to
love be what we do.
be what we do.
Wow. Very, very powerful. I like that. I'm going to have to
Right?
repost that on my Facebook today. Let the beauty we love be what we do. Now, quick question for you, Miss Paula. If somebody was interested in, maybe getting involved with the Gross National Happiness USA, is there a, phone number or website our listeners can visit to learn more information?
Absolutely. You can learn more about the organization, Gross National Happiness USA, by going to our website. It's gnhusa.org. And you can find out ways that you can participate and contribute to this new paradigm, really, by clicking on the menu. And one of the things we have on the website is a charter for happiness. And it basically says that happiness isn't frivolous, right? Everyone I speak to, almost to a person, says, what we really want out of life and what we want for the people that we care about is for them to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to know what that is, and we need to create the conditions that help us to choose happiness. So I would encourage all your listeners to go to the Charter for Happiness on our website and sign your name. It will help in at the point when we are talking to policymakers to show the support for this shift in way of thinking
Mm-hmm.
that we are moving into. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing that your listeners might care to do is to bring people together, and particularly over food. We always enjoy a good conversation over food.
Mm-hmm.
On March 20th, which is the International Day of Happiness. I don't know if you
Wow.
knew that.
No, I didn't. You said that's March 20th.
Yes. And we celebrate this all around the planet. And what the Gross National Happiness USA is encouraging people to do is to have this guided conversation about what matters most, and hopefully inspire more people to take action in their own um, meaningful way. And you can find information about those dinners also on the website. And then if you care to follow what I'm doing with the project of the Happiness Walk USA, you can find out more on the website. You can see the route. As I said, I'm nearly done, but we can always use some help in finding hosts or interesting people that I can interview along the way. So if you know anybody, my contact information is there as well.
Absolutely, Paula. Now, you're traveling this journey alone, right?
A good part of it is alone. I actually started with a colleague, and this is a 24/7 endeavor.
Oh, man.
when I'm on the road, so it doesn't easily fit into everybody's life. So a good majority of it I have walked alone, although at this point there have been, let me see, I think 93 different people who have joined me either for, a quarter mile up to, several weeks at a time. So
that's amazing.
It's a wonderful way to meet people, to be out and walking and having conversation. I'm a big fan of being out in nature. If you
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, Miss Paula. We're about to wrap up here, Paula. What advice can you leave with our listeners today? Whether it's, living life more abundantly, finding happiness, what can you leave with them today?
Well, I think that's an entire book in and of itself. But let me think. I think, first of all, personal reflection, knowing yourself, knowing what your passions are, being discerning and educating yourself, and not being guided by what other people think about you or what you should believe, but deciding those things for yourself. But doing something, just doing something, whether it's simple or big. And honestly, just smiling at somebody and making eye contact. I have had people say these things have made huge differences in their lives. So just connecting with people is so important in a way that you may never know.
Absolutely.
And like I said, just following your passions, and then please have conversations. But do something to make a difference in your big or small way.
Absolutely.
I've been so inspired by people that I've met along the way, and I wish that all of you could have participated in this walk with me, because I think you would all be quite amazed at the people that we are.
Absolutely. Why, thank you again, Paula, for coming on here and, giving us some food for thought. For our listeners out there, just go to the website of GNHUSA.org. You can learn more about what it is. Paula's journey, she's almost done. She will be complete on November the 2nd. Let the beauty we love be what we do. That is one of the best things that I've heard. That is a quote that I will actually keep somewhere so I can remember it when I feel like I'm just working 9 to 5. All right, everybody, that concludes another episode of Groove with Portia. Definitely come back. Stay tuned. Take care and have a good evening.